In section 2, we are going to address approaches to research. Now, research approaches are the overarching strategies and philosophical frameworks that guide the research. And this could be qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods. And so, any of these approaches refer to those strategies and frameworks that encompass things like philosophical assumptions, the nature of the research problem, and type of data being collected. 20th century German playwright Bertolt Brecht was stated as saying, "Never believe on faith, see for yourself. What you yourself don't learn, you don't know." So this is another quote that you can discuss in the comments below. Consider how it relates to the importance of empirical evidence and research. First off, we have quantitative research. And think of this as the number cruncher approach. So this includes recording, measuring, classifying, assessing, and interpreting psychological phenomena using numerical data and statistical comparisons. Imagine we're comparing the emotional stability of managers in Japan and France. We'd collect data on their emotional responses and use statistical analysis to see if there are any differences. Or we might compare the organizational skills of job applicants in a diverse cultural environment using data and statistics. For instance, a study by Talheim and colleagues found that rice growers in agricultural groups in southern China are more collectivist and holistic thinking than wheat growing ones that are more individualistic in northern China. Now let's talk about some of the key concepts in quantitative research. We have measures of central tendency, which tell us where most data is located, and these include the mode, the median, and the mean. And we also have different measurement scales like nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio, which help us to categorize and quantify our data. And don't forget about correlations. These tell us about how variables are related. We can have positive correlations where variables move in the same direction, or negative correlations where they move in opposite directions. And remember, correlations don't always mean causation. But numbers aren't everything, so let's switch gears and explore the wonderful world of qualitative research. So qualitative research, on the other hand, captures deep cultural distinctions by diving deep into the richness and complexity of cultural phenomena. This type of research does not rely on numerical measurement or statistical procedures. It's used when studying variables that are difficult to measure, such as subjective experiences, dreams, and cultural context. These methods are also necessary when standardized measures are unsuitable or unavailable, such as with illiterate subjects or when concepts are not easily defined in certain languages. Imagine we're studying the impact of trauma on refugees from a war-torn country. We might conduct in-depth interviews to understand their subjective experiences, or we might analyze cultural artifacts like songs or stories to see how trauma is expressed and coped with in their culture. And so qualitative research can be conducted in natural settings, allowing participants to carry out their daily environments in non-research atmospheres. For example, Khalil et al., 2024, conducted a study on refugees from Sudan and assessed the prevalence of PTSD and trauma among refugees, internally displaced and non-displaced people during the armed conflict. And so the study found that refugees had a significantly higher percentage of traumatic events and greater risk of developing PTSD compared to other groups. One form of qualitative research is psychobiographical research, which involves in-depth analysis of individuals, often celebrities or leaders from different cultures. One of the great things about qualitative research is that it allows us to explore complex and sensitive topics that might be difficult to capture with numbers alone. It also lets us study cultural phenomena in natural settings, giving us a more authentic understanding. And sometimes a single approach will not thoroughly answer a research question. And in this case, we would employ a mixed methods approach that provides a comprehensive understanding of psychological phenomena across different groups. So this approach leverages the strengths of both methodologies to address complex research questions that cannot be fully explored using a single method. And several key features speak to its benefits. Mixed methods research involves collecting and analyzing both qualitative and quantitative data within the same study. And this integration allows researchers to gain a deeper and more nuanced understanding of the cultural phenomena of study. Researchers can use various mixed methods designs, such as concurrent, sequential, and embedded designs. And these designs offer flexibility in how data is collected and analyzed, enabling researchers to address different aspects of the research question. Furthermore, mixed methods research emphasizes the importance of context. By combining qualitative insights with quantitative data, researchers can better understand the cultural specificity and contextual factors that influence psychological phenomena. For example, in a study exploring intergenerational changes in child behavior and parent socialization practices in China, Zhou et al. Used a mixed methods approach, combining qualitative interviews with quantitative analyses. So grandmothers from Beijing provided retrospective reports on 3 generations of children and parents in their families, focusing on traits such as autonomy, curiosity, self-expression, obedience, and shyness, as child rearing behaviors like support, praise, criticism, and control. And so the study found an increase in perceived child autonomy, curiosity, and self-expression, which are traits adapted to more individualistic environments. Conversely, traits like obedience and shyness, which are adapted to more collectivist environments, declined across generations. And there was an increase in promotion-based socialization strategies, such as support and praise over generations as well, while the patterns of prevention-based strategies, such as criticism and control, was less clear. The findings further suggested that younger generations exhibit more individualistic behaviors, reflecting broader socio-demographic trends and cultural shifts. And in cross-cultural psychology, this approach allows researchers to explore cultural differences and similarities. For example, researchers might use qualitative methods to explore cultural beliefs and practices, followed by quantitative methods to measure the prevalence and impact of these beliefs across cultures. And this approach allows researchers to tackle complex psychological questions without imposing Western norms or imposing contextual factors. So by integrating qualitative and quantitative data, researchers can capture the uniqueness of psychological phenomena within different cultures. And then the combination of these two methods enhance the validity and reliability of research findings. So qualitative data can provide context and depth to quantitative results, while quantitative data can offer generalizability and statistical rigor. And again, these methods are not mutually exclusive, and they're often used together. Researchers might use qualitative methods first to gain an initial understanding of a study sample before applying quantitative procedures. Now that we understand research approaches, let's align them with the scientific method. This systematic process guides us through each step of our research, ensuring that our findings are robust, reliable, and applicable across different cultural contexts. The first step is to identify the issue that we want to study, and this involves reviewing existing scholarly literature to understand what has already been discovered and where gaps in knowledge exist. Next, we identify research goals, and this includes introducing our research hypotheses and approaches for interpreting results. Now, depending on our approach, we might use inductive reasoning, which is a top-down approach that is useful for generating new hypotheses and theories based on observed cultural differences and similarities. Or we might use deductive reasoning, which is a bottom-up approach, and this is important for testing and validating these hypotheses across different cultural contexts, ensuring that the findings are robust and generalizable. Third, we then define the groups or materials to be studied, and this could include specific cultural groups, age ranges, or other relevant characteristics. Fourth, selecting or designing the appropriate methodology is crucial. We must ensure our research complies with ethical standards and obtain necessary approvals from review boards. And before fully launching our study, we conduct a pilot study to test our methodology. This helps identify any potential issues and refine our approach. 6, with our methodology in place, we gather research data, and this can involve surveys, interviews, observations, or other data collection methods. Now, we'll discuss these in a bit more detail later in the next section. And once data is collected, we analyze our results. The quantitative data relies on statistical analyses, and qualitative data uses other analytical procedures to interpret the results. And this step is critical for understanding the implications of our findings. Then we prepare a detailed report that critically analyzes the results, and this includes discussing the limitations of the study and the reliability of the findings. This report is generally being prepared to be shared and disseminated to external stakeholders. And finally, we suggest how our data can be used in various fields, such as education, therapy, business, or conflict resolution. The goal is to ensure our research has practical value and can inform real-world applications, and this information should be included in the report. Now, researchers aim to explore both cross-cultural differences and similarities using specific strategies. Reflecting on the 4 goals of cross-cultural research, identifying the purposes of our research question will guide strategy that should be employed. The comparativist strategy is what we might call basic research. It focuses on identifying similarities and differences in certain statistical measures across a sample of cultures. This strategy is essential for understanding how cultural contexts influence psychological phenomena. And here's how it works. Researchers compare specific psychological traits, behaviors, or outcomes across different cultural groups. For example, a study might compare levels of individualism and collectivism in various countries to understand how these cultural dimensions affect social behavior, or examine the relationship between education level and family size across different countries. So by examining multiple cultures, researchers can identify patterns and trends that are consistent across cultures or unique to specific cultural contexts. And this helps us to understand the universal and cultural specific aspects of psychological phenomena. Now, the comparative strategy contributes to the development of cross-cultural theories by highlighting how cultural variables interact with psychological processes. For instance, comparing stress, coping mechanisms in different cultures can reveal how cultural values shape coping strategies. And while the comparativist strategy aims to understand broader patterns and differences by comparing various cases, often without a direct goal to solve an immediate issue. But the application-oriented strategy in cross-cultural research goes beyond that of basic research and aims to establish the applicability of research findings obtained in one country or culture to other countries and cultures. And this strategy is particularly useful for testing the generalizability of psychological theories and interventions across different cultural contexts. And so here's how it works. Researchers apply findings from one cultural context to another to see if the results hold true. For example, a study on the effectiveness of a new classroom intervention program developed in Japan might be tested in Brazil to determine if it's equally effective in classroom management and student learning outcomes. And this strategy often involves adapting the original methods or interventions to fit the cultural context of the new setting. This might include translating materials, modifying procedures to align with cultural norms, or incorporating culturally relevant examples. And the goal is to ensure that psychological interventions, educational programs, or other applications are effective and relevant across different cultural strategies. Basically, finding practical solutions to specific problems. And this can lead to more inclusive and universally applicable practices in psychology. So let's summarize what we've covered in section 2, our approaches to research. We began by examining the 3 types of research that can be conducted. Quantitative research, which involves systematic investigation of psychological phenomena using numbers and statistical analysis. Qualitative research, which focuses on the in-depth analysis of non-numerical data. And then we discuss mixed methods research, which combines both quantitative and qualitative approaches for a more holistic view. And this approach integrates the different methods and offers flexibility in research design, emphasizing contextual understanding. We also cover the scientific method in cross-cultural psychology, outlining the steps involved as researchers move from stating the problem critically, analyzing results, and suggesting applications in shared report. And finally, we discussed 2 key strategies in cross-cultural research. The comparativist strategy, which focuses on comparing and contrasting cultures to identify patterns and develop theories, and the application-oriented strategy, which tests the applicability of research findings from one culture to another, involving cultural adaptation and practical implications. And so by understanding these approaches and strategies, we can conduct thorough and meaningful cross-cultural research that contributes valuable insights to the field. So be sure to tune into section 3 as we dive into the specifics of research methods in cross-cultural psychology.